Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 241 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Patrick Nisley.
My name is Summer Rain.
Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, boy, oh boy, we got ourselves a very special guest on today's episode of the show. Please welcome, for the first time on the show, Rob from Ruleof2Review, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going, Rob?
Oh, thank you for the applause. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for inviting me and having me on the show. I'm pretty excited.
Oh, yeah. We're glad to have you, Rob. Thanks so much for joining us. Rob's got a great YouTube channel. Check that out, by the way. We'll talk more about that at the end of the show. But we have you on, Rob, because we're going to be talking all about the GameCube on today's episode, and more specifically, a list of just every GameCube game that you can currently play on the Switch. We've got Nintendo Switch Online for so many of Nintendo's past systems at this point. We kind of think that's not going to happen for the GameCube, but never fear. On the eShop, there's tons of GameCube games, and we're going to be going over some of our favorites. And then also just some of our favorite memories and thoughts, a little mini retrospective on the GameCube as well on today's episode. And then in addition to that, we got a whole bunch of news and rumors to go over in the news section of the show. There's been a ton of Super Switch, Switch 2, whatever you want to call it.
I want to call it the Super Switch.
I'd love to call it the Super Switch. That'd be great for our SEO. And then Golden Sun is coming to NSO. And then there's an Xbox Direct also that's going to be happening this week. We're going to be talking all about that and much more. Before we get into that, how's everybody doing? You guys have a good week? How's your weeks?
Yeah, I am crunching. I am in full crunch mode. Listener, when you are hearing my voice, I am probably on a plane to DC, going to MagFest next weekend. I'm really excited. Still working on my costumes, still practicing my music, making sure I know everything. But next time you hear from me, I'll be telling you all about it. So I'm just like, that's where my brain is right now. It's getting ready to go.
Very good.
Yeah.
How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing pretty good. I had my wedding anniversary this weekend, which which was
we love that.
Fun. It's 13 years, and we went out to a nice dinner, which was what we did. We're old. The dinner was the thing.
You eat dinner when you're young too.
Yeah, but I feel like then you go do something. You go to a show or you go out. Anyway.
Lay it on us, Patrick. Are you guys still in love?
Oh, yes, very much.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But then the other thing I wanted to share, this has just happened today. I'm showing this for our video viewers. My son has this thing he got for his birthday. Crafters out there know what this is, the Cricut or Crycut. They're like these little machines that can like make all kinds of stuff, stickers and so he made some Monochrome Heights stickers for me, which is my game that's in development that I'm working on. So that was really cool.
I have literally never heard anyone say Crycut before.
I know it's Cricut, but I don't know when
it's Cricut. I've never.
I feel like over here we call it both, and that's because I want to say Crycut because that's what I want to say, but I know the real name.
Crycut sounds like an emo band from the early 2000s.
It sure
That's why.
That's true. I had to put that. Okay, I'll stop.
This is the guy who doesn't want to say Goaty or Gotti. It's the game of the year. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No acronyms here.
How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great. I'm at the point right now, first 2 weeks of the year where things are very busy at work. So my day job is just all consuming all day, every day, even weekends, even today, which is a holiday for my industry. So no actual work, but things to be paying attention to and following up on. And, that's life, especially with the new year. But other than that, things are good. We've had some snow and some weather out here. We're preparing for another big snowstorm tomorrow. My wife is a teacher, just found out that they're closing her school, so she doesn't have to work. She went from a 3-day to a 4-day weekend, which is very cool. And so other than that, just kind of randomly just been gaming and killing time and enjoying the new year so far.
Hell yeah. We love that. Yeah, it's been cold as fuck here in Texas too.
I saw.
We're down to, it's been, down in the teens. And so I've been bundling up. I don't know, man. This whole past week has been a lot of watching TV and reading books and watching movies and shit like that. I haven't been gaming quite as much as I normally have been, but it's been nice to imbibe in other forms of media, especially when you're all bundled up and the heater's on. It's nice to just kind of turn your brain off,
NFL playoffs happening too. So I'm just going to say that's been exciting today.
That's true. I think Detroit fans are very happy.
They are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, last week we did an all news episode because we'd been doing several special episodes where we didn't get to cover the news with the holidays. And we got some great comments on our Discord and on YouTube, as always. So a few quick shout outs to a few of the people that commented. Medium Quality is now a competitive Tetris fan, thanks to David's sharing and analysis.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm putting Tetris Hypno in the Discord and trying to convert everybody.
That also sounds like an emo band. I'm just
Tetris Hypno? Yeah. Absolutely.
Hans is here for Patrick's Domino's intervention and thinks the pan with the extra sauce is the way to go.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please.
Eric Anderson from Cyan, who we had on the show recently, friend of the show, also tweeted that he tried Domino's for the first time in 15 years and had a great time with it. So we're slowly but surely converting everybody into a Tetris head and a Domino's head.
Oh boy. And then I wanted to make sure we shouted out Swampy Southpaw, who made the Lord of the Rings trilogy meme based on the trilogy of our show that we just did. That was really nice. Real Tomato had a post about Suika Game, how that game is so insidious and it's completely taken over their life since the last episode. And then over on YouTube, this one's for Summer. Karosetta said, congrats on the community orchestra gig, Summer. That sounds fun. As a former choir kid, always hoping for any opportunity to sing in front of people. So,
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Karosetta. Yeah, I'm still freaking out about it. So
we can't wait to hear about that, Summer. Well, that does it. There's more comments and stuff, but that's some of the shout outs. If you too want to be shouted out, make sure you join our Discord, comment there, or leave a comment on the YouTube channel, or send us a DM or something like that. And also, we appreciate it if you share the podcast with a friend and hop on over to the YouTube if you're not already watching on YouTube and hit like and subscribe for us. And with that, we will move into the video game news. We're starting off with some Splatoon 3. The Frosty Fest, Splatfest just wrapped up. It was friends versus family versus solo, who you want to spend the holidays with. And solo dominated. Clean sweep. This is the world we live in.
Yeah.
That is a post-COVID Splatfest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Man, somebody posted in here.
Was it B? B
Yeah,
Campbell.
I mean,
his comment was my favorite.
If you have no friends or family, you have lots of time to play Splatoon.
Yes.
That is true. But it's also just been like anytime it's like hugs versus handshakes versus like don't touch me wins or something like that. Or what was it? No, maybe it was handshake that won. But it's like the people that isolate continue to win. Also, this is like yet another dub for Team Com. This is the white ink that spewed again this time. So pretty much any time there is white ink, go with that team.
If you want to win.
You can't stop.
If you can't
stop what's coming, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just can't do it.
So anyway, that happened. And moving on to some rumors, I guess we call these alleged specs for what we like to call here the Super Switch, the next Nintendo console, which the internet is incorrectly calling the Switch 2. I'm sure it'll be the Super Switch. So I guess among other things, there's been like a Taiwanese economics website that posted some info about the specs, according to some of their sources, some industry insiders. Who wants to talk about this? Is anybody like really comfortable with these specs and want to give us the rundown here?
Well, I mean, I think what a lot of people have been taken away, especially from the specs, is that like this next thing is going to be like a PS4 level. That's been the discourse online, right? And I know, Rob, you just put up a video on this on your YouTube page. So a lot of this is like unconfirmed, but kind of what's some of your thoughts on some of these specs that you've read?
Well, you're right in the sense that it really is unconfirmed. And what little bit I've had to research into that Taiwanese economic site that you mentioned, Patrick, is that I don't believe that the source that they had is the most reputable or at least has the best track record. But it is a situation where everyone's kind of running with these specs that have leaked. And in this period of time where like next gen is afoot and everyone's waiting for that official stuff and everyone gets excited, people start running with things that we don't necessarily know are real because it gets exciting and that's what gets engagement and stuff online. And so I will freely admit, and I've been saying this on my channel pretty much since I've had it. I've always been very upfront. I'm not a very tech savvy dude. So when I see like, this chip versus that chip versus this onboard RAM and storage and stuff, it's never really meant a whole lot to me. So when I see the general discourse that you were talking about too, David, about people are kind of saying this is PS4, base PS4 level too, not even PS4 Pro, right? They're saying this is base PS4. While I can't like dissect exactly what the numbers and everything means, when I just think of a Switch or Super Switch, I almost said Switch 2. I almost said the Voldemort of titles.
Appreciate that.
Super Switch, which I would also prefer that title just for what it's worth, much more than Switch 2. I feel like my personal opinion is that would be a more than acceptable power level for something that's a handheld that can also be played on your TV. And, I that video I posted earlier today, David, that you referenced, I even pointed out, and the internet has been doing this too, a couple of great examples of base PlayStation 4, not PS4 Pro, like I said, but just base level games like God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok and Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima that are gorgeous. And they don't really feel all that last gen if you see them today compared to like PS5. And if a Switch can play that, incredible, very impressive to me. And then even kind of the last kind of bullet point I would add to that is when you look at what Nintendo has historically been able to achieve with their own hardware and their own first-party games, look at any Mario or Zelda game that released like at its zenith. It's incredible. They're almost making something that feels next gen for the hardware they're developing it on.
Yeah,
so that's my takeaway. Yeah, I'm excited.
I totally agree with that. Especially the Nintendo's like art design has always compensated for any kind of lack of processing power or whatever graphical fidelity that they have. So that's exciting. But I think it's also like the Steam Deck is about a PS4, a base PS4 level of power, and games look great on that. And you're working in a platform where that's really just a PC, So it's like games can scale up to like super high quality, or they can go down to like wherever you're really running a game on a Steam Deck, right? Switch is going to be a closed platform where people can really hone in the performance that's going to make the most of that particular hardware instead of trying to go for a kind of a lot of different stuff. So even if this is true, like it might not be, I think that the discourse being like a lot of people are like panicked that a next gen console is not going to be like as good as a PS5. Like it really shouldn't be a big deal. I think I'm just excited for them to show whatever it is, even if it's like slightly more powerful than a Switch, even if it's not PS4, I think that they're going to do just fine with it.
Well, sticking with the next Nintendo console, the Super Switch as we're calling it, Game Shark, the company that makes Game Shark or made Game Shark allegedly, is saying that they're coming back with AI Shark. And I love the Kotaku article about this because they're like, but you don't care about that. You care about what they said, which is that they plan to launch to coincide with the Nintendo Switch 2 or Super Switch in September 2024. And after multiple people have asked them for comments, they've walked this like all the way back to be like, we don't know anything about what Nintendo's doing, but they're probably just doing this for the clicks because we're talking about it. We did it. They did it. They did it. We're talking about it. But what do you think? Do you think that, number one, Alltech Lansing, who makes Game Shark now called AI Shark, knows anything about this? Do you think this was just a publicity stunt? Do you think September is a reasonable launch frame?
First of all, I am very interested in what Game Shark's doing right now. Kotaku. So
they're wrong.
I'm just like amazed that the guy who made Game Shark isn't like sitting back on a yacht in the middle of the Pacific right now and is like actively trying to do things in the year of our Lord 2024. I just find that hilarious. But
all those cheaters made me so much money.
Yeah, exactly. I just imagine whoever made Game Shark is like a James McAfee type. You know what I mean? But anyway, as far as what they said, I mean, it would make sense that they wouldn't know anything. It's not like they've been chums with Nintendo. Nintendo is not like a fan of Game Shark, right? And so, it's doubtful that they know anything directly from Nintendo, but I do think it is very possible that they do know some insider knowledge. And I think that there are a lot of third-party peripheral makers and a lot of people that are aware of when a new Switch is going to be coming out this year, right? And I think that the tech industry, this came out at CES. They were at CES in the past week, and there's been a few things that came out from that. But I think the main thing is that all these people talk to each other, right? So while yes, they were immediately like, we're just guessing. Like that's also what you would say if you did know, you know. You wouldn't kind of like play your hand and say like, this is where I got my information or blah, 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 right? Either way, September feels right to me.
Yeah.
I think like a late summer launch for this thing feels like a good enough time for you to get a boost of sales for whatever your launch games are during that launch window, and then another big boost of sales
The holidays.
in the holidays, right? Like 2 in 1 year.
Yep.
But what do you think, Summer?
Oh, I think I'm getting a Super Switch for my birthday in September.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What day is your birthday?
Oh, don't ask me this on the podcast.
Is that doxing?
It's late
No,
September.
My birthday is September 11th, David.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Oh wow.
So
The day that Advance Wars was originally supposed to come out.
yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
And,
That's how we all
nothing else of
remember it.
significance.
That's how we remember
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we know about it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So I will be getting a Super Switch for my birthday. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Nice.
has twin joysticks.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Is it too soon? Is 23 years, 22 years too soon? I don't know.
Yeah. Just hope the something stick drift. Whatever. I can't.
boy.
There's a joke in there.
Yeah.
We'll move on, y'all. We'll move on to gamesindustry.biz put out an article recently about a lot of things about next year or this year. I'm sorry. I'm still living in the past, y'all. And about the Nintendo Switch 2 and sort of speculation about it. And in this analysis, kind of offhandedly, they mentioned that they have sources that are suggesting that Nintendo is in talks with 3 or more studios for working on their IP. And presumably that is like beyond ones they regularly work with, is kind of the implication of the article that, this isn't, I don't think, this is talks, right? It's not like Bandai Namco or somebody that's already got like a relationship. So,
Or like Grezzo or something like that. Yeah.
Right. And they kind of mention some of those ones as like examples of what they're talking about. So I guess open for discussion here. What would we want to see? And do you think this is, do you think this makes sense for Nintendo at this time to be talking to more studios? Do you think this is true? And then what would you like?
Whether or not it's real, I'll say I'm not 100% sure. But to your other question, I do think there is a chance that Nintendo might be in this place preparing to transition from one generation to another, maybe trying to balance the workload of their internal teams and the studios they own, like a Monolith and a Retro, kind of parsing out some of their other, I guess we'll call them more forgotten franchises to some other studios, which they do often. That does happen for a lot of different. I think you mentioned Grezzo. They did. I think that was the team behind like the Link's Awakening remake.
Yep.
Tantalus, I believe, was the studio behind the Twilight Princess HD port, if I remember that far back as well. But as far as hopes and dreams, a couple of franchises that make sense to me. Star Fox, everyone talks about that one in this kind of within this story. Yeah, I'm with you. I want it so bad. I want Star Fox to come back. I'm one of those weirdos that liked Star Fox Zero. You can crucify me if you want, but I like that game. I know. Summer, I saw you react. I think a lot of people, I know people don't like it, and that's okay. I like it. It's not perfect, but I would love to see Star Fox get a good return to form. So that's
Same.
one. Yeah. Punch Out is another one that I think could be due. Am I stealing yours?
No, these are the two things that I mentioned on our
Oh.
episode of like predictions for 2024. Those are the 2 pitches I made. So go ahead, continue,
Incredible.
please.
Sure, yeah.
You're on my side.
Besties.
Yeah. Those ones, and I mean, everyone talks about F-Zero. I want it back just as much as the next person. So that would make sense. And there's another one that I had that already jumped in and out of my brain. It wasn't Kid Icarus because I think that would be handled by Sakurai if they were going to.
I got a feeling that we'll be seeing that in the next 6 months, to be honest.
I think in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I think we got a remake of that on the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah, those are just ones that jump to my mind when I think of long forgotten Nintendo IPs.
Okay, here we go. We got Mock Rider. We got
Okay.
Devil World. And Popeye.
Ice Climber.
Those are the 3 that are coming back.
Famed Nintendo IP Popeye.
It's been a while. But yeah, no, I mean, Ice Climbers would be really cool, right? I think I heard on somewhere else somebody talking about like fan casting Ice Climbers with the developer being the It Takes Two devs. I forget where I heard
that was
that.
An EA. Or am I crazy? Was that an EA thing?
Yeah,
Along with the Joseph Ferris guy.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, that would be cool. But yeah, so like a Ice Climbers game that forces kind of co-op in that way, or cooperation within the gameplay, right?
You know who I think would be good at an Ice Climbers game would be Capcom. I could see them taking it's not the kind of like, family friendly cartoony thing you associate with a lot of their games, but they're just such a fun developer. And I think if they took a stab at something like that, they have made Game Boy Zelda games in the past, to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
So they've worked with. So that's just, you said Ice Climbers, and I was like, for some reason, Capcom jumped to my brain. That could be interesting.
We did an episode kind of on this a while ago, like who should Nintendo partner with? We definitely had some thoughts there, and those all still apply. So if you're interested in more of our thoughts on this, feel free to go back like 200 episodes.
That was a long time ago.
Listen to one of those. Last thing I'll say on this is I think this is just more of an indication of the Furukawa-led Nintendo, right? I don't think this is a conversation that people would be having in the Iwata years, right? I think that he held stuff so much more close to the chest, but it's like just how we're getting, like Sony now is producing a Legend of Zelda movie. Yeah. Universal is working on Mario and stuff like that. Like they're lending stuff out where they never did before. And I'm just pleased as punch to see that this is the direction we're going in and to being so precious with everything. I think that this will hopefully give us more content. Maybe not all like the highest of Nintendo quality if it's other people doing it, but I have faith in them that they'll have good oversight.
I think it's a great point, and forgive me because I don't want to extend this any longer than it needs to be, but it's a great point because, Miyamoto very famously has been kind of moved into more of that position of that like outside business relations and the licensing to movie studios, potentially like a TV or a streaming series, the Universal theme parks, like you said. Those kinds of things have been like in the sort of, I think Iwata may have been talking about it a little bit before he passed, but it for sure, to your point, is more in the post-Iwata Furukawa era. Yeah. It seems like they're really like, what can we do outside of games to be successful? And so far, between the Mario movie and the theme park, they are clearly doing a great job. So it's just a great point. I think you're right.
We will move on to some Nintendo Switch Online news, and that is we got the word that Golden Sun 1 and 2 are both coming. And by the time this episode comes out, you can play them on the Nintendo Switch Online apps if you subscribe, right, to the expansion pack tier.
the beefed up tier.
Yes. Yeah. By the time you're listening to this, I will be playing it on a flight to DC.
Very good.
We got everybody here played these games? Big Golden Sun fans? Excited to play them? Never played them?
But my toxic trait is I've never played a Golden Sun game. So I'm pretty excited to at least dip my toe in and see what this Isaac guy is all about. We'll see. I've got a million games that I'm working on right now. Yeah. And I'm also, keep eyeing that Prince of Persia game, even though I don't really have time for it. But yeah, I'll definitely at least be firing this up whenever these drop.
From what I understand, the second one really builds upon everything that people wanted from the first one as well. So if you don't find yourself totally latching on to the first one, it wouldn't be horrible to just look up a quick recap of everything that goes on in that first one. And then go ahead and jump into the second one. That being said, if you start playing the first one and you like it, then you're going to love the second one.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I actually played the first one back when it came out. I never played the second one. One of the few JRPGs. Yeah, it's one of the few JRPGs I've liked because it's not traditionally a genre that I click with too much. There are a few of them, but the first Golden Sun is one. I was obsessed on my SP playing that thing. So I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
I know, a lot of people are very happy. This is making I saw somebody posted this is on the local news.
I saw that
Golden Sun 1 and 2 coming to Nintendo Switch Online. I'm like, damn. Should we be doing local news, King? That's they're stealing our podcast topics and putting it on the 6 o'clock over dinner.
Those jerks.
Yeah.
Well, that's really fascinating. That that's a whole nother discussion. That it's newsworthy.
Yeah. People are really excited.
Well, we'll talk more about that when one of us starts playing it. But for now, we'll move on to something else that's happening this week that we can't really speak to, but you listening probably already know. And that's that there is an Xbox Developer Direct happening on January 18th. So I don't know how much we want to talk about this, since next week we'll really be able to cover it. But if anybody wants to make some ridiculous guesses, I mean, they've even said some of the things and have visuals around some of the things that they're going to talk about. So I don't know if there'll be a lot of surprises or not, but
like Indiana Jones is going to be there, and Hellblade and Avowed, and I think like a strategy game by the makers of Civ, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm hoping for another Hi-Fi Rush style shadow drop of some nature. You know, I know then they were like, and a mystery game, and then that game was the shadow drop, and they haven't really said that they're doing a mystery game this time. But I think for that got a lot of people excited whenever they did do those shadow drops, and hopefully that's something they're kind of taking from Nintendo Directs, is like kind of the hype of day and date. Like, here's the thing you didn't even know existed, and now you can play it right now because you have Game Pass. You know, so I'd like to see something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it next week. I don't know. There's a whole lot to speculate about this close to it. And then last up, this is a fun one. Sega. We all know that the Game Awards, they announced that they are bringing back several old games, classic Sega IP coming back, and they showed off a handful of them, like Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, and a few others. But there's been some rumors that, I guess, as an insider gamer has some sources that specifically said it's 10 Sega classics that were greenlit between 2020 and 2021. So obviously we know about 5 of them. So filling in some of the gaps, if this is true, would be Panzer Dragoon, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Sakura Taisen, which is not something I am very familiar with. I just read that name for the first time. So
I think you nailed it.
Thank you.
I feel like Comic Zone could be one that could make a lot of sense. That has like a cult following, kind of from the Sega Genesis era, which is my era, and a great game. So that would be interesting. I didn't know even about that rumor about the 10 games instead of the 5. So that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there was another, real briefly, news-wise, there was another, somebody pointed out, with trademarks, which is, it doesn't really mean anything. But Gematsu apparently highlighted that Sega trademarked a bunch of old game titles as well. So I don't know.
Including Super Monkey Ball. Let's go. God, I love
Was that in there?
primates.
Was Monkey Ball in there?
Yeah,
Sure
the trademarks.
was.
But again, they probably trademark things whether they're bringing them back or not, because that
we've heard other rumors about Monkey Ball though, like specifically for Switch 2. Excuse me, Super Switch. And so I think that, you know, if that's going to happen, it'll be then. Anyway, this is exciting. It's just good to see Sega diversifying some of their output again. Like you said with Comic Zone, I mean, they're working on a Comic Zone like movie or show or something. I think they said.
Really?
Yeah, it's like that. Space Channel 5 and
oh wow,
and
that's
other
obscure
one. Yeah, I forget what the other one was, but they're really like weird, obscure things. So they're like, because Sonic did well, these will do well. It's like, I don't know.
Toe
guys.
Jam and Earl, man. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, finally get the
Oh, you're thinking of like
Ren and
All Real
Stimpy.
Monsters or something? Or
Ren and Stimpy. I'm thinking of Ren and Stimpy.
Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. If Toe Jam and Earl got a Ren and Stimpy style show, I think that'd be pretty fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'd be so down.
Well, I think that's going to do it then for our news segment for the week. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking all about GameCube and GameCube games on Switch. We are back, and we're talking about the GameCube this week. We're talking a little bit about just the GameCube in general, sort of a, like David said at the top, a mini retrospective, but also we're going to talk about the fact that you can find some GameCube games on the Switch, and we're going to go over most of those that we know of, at least, and that we want to talk about, and maybe give some lip service to as many as we can. But yeah, I'm going to be honest and just open this up with saying the GameCube is the one console generation of Nintendo that I have the least personal knowledge about. So I'm going to be here to just listen and facilitate as needed. But we've talked about this. The age I was at that time was like, I have my PlayStation and my Xbox. I don't need to play Nintendo games. And so I missed it. So I would love to hear y'all enlighten me about your experiences with this console and what you liked about it and your memories and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Rob, let's start with you. I know you're a big GameCube fan in general.
I am. Yeah. GameCube is actually my second favorite video game console of all time. Also my second favorite Nintendo console of all time. So you can do the math and kind of figure that out. Yeah, no, I love the GameCube. And Patrick, it's your story is kind of interesting because I think that when you look at when the GameCube released, it was into Sony's second generation and Microsoft's first jump into gaming. And I think that those two consoles and those two companies really began a really important, if you think about it, a really important kind of paradigm shift and like gamer shift in a way, because whereas Nintendo wasn't really aging up a whole lot at the time, like into the N64, the PlayStation and then later the PS2 and the Xbox really kind of started to do like the cooler thing, right? It was like, I think that's probably why you were saying you were at the age where you were really into that. They were doing like, some of these games came out on Nintendo consoles, but they were doing like the Tony Hawks and the Maddens and just a lot of the Metal Gear Solids and things like that it took Nintendo a while to kind of catch up to those things. And actually, I think the GameCube is when they began to do that, because GameCube, sometimes people I don't think remember this, but it had really excellent third-party support, including a lot of mature games. Yeah, it really was the generation that Nintendo was willing to start embracing mature games like Resident Evil and Splinter Cell and other like first-person shooters and stuff. So I found that interesting because I totally get it. Nintendo missed the boat on the mature audience with the 64, and I think GameCube is when they kind of tried to do that a little bit. But to not drone on for too terribly long, like I said, it is my second favorite console of all time. I still play my GameCube. The last couple of months, I've been going through some older games and buying some from eBay and my retro store down the road and just kind of going down memory lane. I was 21 when it launched, and a year later in 2002, I will say this, they were impossible to find, if any one of you guys remembers, right? Because GameCube and Xbox were very close, so hard to find. And there was this was when I lived in Denver, Colorado, and there was a used game store, like I'd say 10 minutes up the road from where I was living in an apartment with a roommate, but there was a huge Denver snowstorm. But I had been trying for weeks to find a GameCube. And I called on this snowy day, because in Denver, nothing shuts down no matter how much it snows. So I called the store. I was like, tell me you got a GameCube. And they're like, we have one used GameCube. And I was like, hold it. I'm going to pack up my N64 and all my stuff in a bag. And I bundled up and I walked. Fun fact for you guys who are probably not familiar with Denver, this store was located right next to the real Casa Bonita, by the way. So I walked, the famous Casa Bonita from South Park. I walked probably 30 minutes in the snow with a plastic bag full of my N64 stuff to trade it in for a used GameCube.
Wow.
It was amazing. I got Wave Race Blue Storm and I was so excited. And it was just so much fun. Yeah. And so there's so much other stuff. I mean, I worked actually at GameStop as an assistant manager through most of that generation. So I was peddling the GameCube like crazy to customers. Everyone, Patrick, you would have been one of the people coming in and be like, all right, so I need either an Xbox or a PlayStation 2. I want that Metal Gear Solid and that Halo. And I was like, no. Look at Super Mario Sunshine. That's the game you want. Look at Pikmin. Come over here, sir.
The only Metal Gear that you need is Twin Snakes. That's the only Metal Gear that you need.
100%. It was just amazing. So I have wonderful memories. It's like my favorite job. I was in my early 20s working for GameStop. I went to E3 in 2004 in that era, when GameCube was the current Nintendo console, because I was an assistant manager at GameStop, and that was your backdoor in. Before they made it a public event that they started selling tickets for a while, it was only insider stuff. And me and my then girlfriend and a roommate, we all drove out there from Colorado. And so it just was great. I mean, also, last point, my favorite video game of all time is Metroid Prime, which is GameCube game. So also my favorite Zelda game is The Wind Waker, that released on the GameCube. So some of my all-time favorite games, including my number one, came out on that console. So
absolutely,
that's just why I love it. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, hopefully we will get we will be able to add Wind Waker to this list of GameCube games that you can play on the Switch. We thought that we would have that for the past like 4 fucking years, but here we are. but yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point that you said about Nintendo. This was kind of like the last time before the Switch really that they tried to kind of reach the audience that the Xbox and the PlayStation were hitting, right? And even Patrick, like what you were saying, it clearly didn't work like for you. I mean, it did for a lot of people, obviously, but they didn't sell as many as those other two platforms during this time, right? It was still kind of lagging behind. But I think that the kid-friendly view of like the N64 and the Super Nintendo and the NES and stuff like that, that like stench kind of stuck around on the GameCube, even though they were trying desperately to move into more mature territories. You'd see that in a lot of different ways. Like, you know, they did tons of like press events at this time with like celebrities, and they would have, that's where all like the fun photos of like, Philip Seymour Hoffman playing like Rogue
Jason
Squadron
Alexander.
2, Jason Alexander, it looked like a little clutch. So you had like Paris Hilton and all them like kind of holding it up on the red carpet and stuff like that, So they were really trying to reach out to a different kind of audience here. And then this was also around the time that you had the Capcom 5, right? Where Capcom was like, we're going to be putting out 5 games exclusively for GameCube, and they're all basically action and adult focused. Some of those were like a little more kid friendly, like Beautiful Joe. But they had Piano 3, Beautiful Joe, Dead Phoenix was one of them as well. I don't know if that actually did ever come out.
It did not. It's the
that was
only one that
canceled.
never released. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then you had obviously Killer 7 and then Resident Evil 4. That was, which is known as like the best Resident Evil game. That was a GameCube exclusive when it came out. But, for me, I was a bit younger than you were when this came out, Rob. But it, I remember mainly just being like completely blown away. I was like really into Nintendo Power at the time. And so I kept looking forward to like the Nintendo Dolphin and seeing like early images of like what they could do with the graphics and just being like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And then I think just playing that Rogue Squadron 2 whenever it came out, like,
yeah,
I was like, this just looks like the movie. Like I can't tell this from, from reality,
And Luigi's Mansion. Those are 2 killer, very graphically like impressive launch games that really got people excited about the graphics,
Yeah. So I loved this console. I mean, I also loved the PS2. I had a PS2 as well when I was a kid, but there were 2 very different things. It was kind of always like first was the GameCube and then the PS2, and it was like, or at least that's how I had them in my head. But it was also, you had different kinds of experiences on each one, like you were saying. And I think even though there was a lot of third-party support, and we'll get to that in this list, there's a lot of third-party games just from this era in general that we're including on this list. But there was still a lot of like really interesting exclusives,
Summer, do you got any good GameCube memories or stories for us?
Sure. So, our GameCube, my distinct memory is that it's what my sister used her first communion money on to buy.
Oh, very cool.
But that she was very clear in that she wanted me to also play it, and very mature for like a 10-year-old, right? And so, or however old that is, like 8, I think. And so it was the GameCube and Pokemon Coliseum was our first game that we got for it. A phenomenal game that refuses to be acknowledged by both Pokemon Company and Nintendo. Literally, they just had their 20th anniversary, and the only person that acknowledged it was the composer. So, like that, it's like it's in the ground, man. But so Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD, obviously, both of those like go together. Fantastic games. Also Luigi's Mansion, and otherwise the other games that we had were mostly just like shitty third-party licensed games. Like I played a lot of Monsters Inc. Dodgeball.
Oh man.
And I think I think we had MLB like 04 on there. And I think I literally had it because it was like the last game that had Sammy Sosa for the Cubs.
Probably. Yeah.
And that is mostly, I think, my and of course, and that was my introduction to Harvest Moon as well. So we played a lot.
Okay.
Played a lot of Harvest Moon, which I mean isn't exclusive to the GameCube. I realized that was across all platforms, but as far as like memories are concerned, I do believe the GameCube version was the main version that was like cheat compatible, where you could plug your controller into the third controller slot and then use certain inputs. And it was how you got like the money glitch and an item duplication glitch. And I don't believe that was possible on the PlayStation 2. I believe that was a GameCube exclusive.
Well, the GameCube does have the 4 controller ports by default, so that could have been why. That's a very Hideo Kojima version of a Harvest Moon game.
Yeah,
right. It was that you had to plug
It's
it
like-
into the third specifically. And then, of course, so we also, so I'll go ahead and talk about peripherals just a little bit because those are also like my core memories. Specifically, we did have the Game Boy Advance attachment to be able to play our Game Boy. The Game Boy Player. Mostly used that to play Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire Pinball because that was excellent on the TV. But then also I out thrifting at this big yearly thrifting expo thing that my parents always did. I found this screen that like latched onto the top of the GameCube and it popped open. And so it basically turned it into its own portable system. And that was perfect because I found it just before I was leaving for college. So I was able to take the GameCube with me when I moved into the
Using
dorms.
the handle, right?
Yeah, it had a little
handle on the
handle.
screen.
Oh yeah.
amazing.
Oh yeah. And then it was when I was in college that people started to mod the GameCubes into like purses, functional, like gutting them and recoloring.
Oh my
them.
God.
And
I
was,
didn't know that happened.
Oh, I was so into that. Oh man. Yeah. Never did it myself, but I was like super like into following people who did that kind of thing. And like, it was like a very fashion forward, like purse basically.
Would this have been like when the console like existed? So like up until like 05, 06 kind of?
This was, this was
after?
probably like, this would have been like 2010s of.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
A
That
little
makes
more-
a little more sense. Then.
Right, where
Yeah.
people have moved
Got
on from playing on the system because we had the Wii by then, right? And so a lot of people were probably playing their GameCube games on the Wii. So then they could use their GameCube to turn it into something else.
Totally, yeah. I mean, and it was cool that like the Wii basically just had a GameCube in it, right? Like that was a great like
Amazing.
era of Nintendo backwards compatibility, right? And I think what you were saying somewhere
RIP,
about right. I mean, hopefully, fucking fingers crossed, man.
I know.
But like for this year, I don't even want to
who
go down
knows,
that
man.
road. Yeah, stop put that out there. But like, but yeah, as far as like peripherals, like they got real wacky with it this year. This was like Nintendo's like Sega era of like fucking around with the hardware and like doing different things. You know, like they had the Phantasy Star Online for the GameCube, used like a whole modem attachment.
There's
This
a
is
whole
when-
modem thing, yeah.
Yeah, this is where like at least in the West, Nintendo games finally started going into online. You had the Game Boy Advance attachments as well, where you had a lot of games that was kind of almost like a proto Wii U, where you're controlling things on the screen while also having information on your Game Boy Advance that you're connecting through the controller slot. Not a ton of games used it, but enough did for us to all remember it. They got like real weird with a lot of this stuff. They got pretty experimental with some of it. And this is also just, glory days of like, there's the only place you can really get games is by going to the store, like a brick and mortar, and like picking up a physical game. So the likelihood of like picking up a peripheral back in those days was much higher than it is like today, when you're mostly just using digital libraries and stuff like that.
It was a very like precursor kind of to the Wii era, and even some of their later eras. Like when you bring up the Game Boy Advance cable, which I actually still have some of those, and I've got like 2 SPs and a regular GBA still. The games that always jump out to my mind that actually used your Game Boy as a controller was Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which me and some of my friends used to get together and play. And then also The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords, where you would, just like you said, and if you think about it, they would later do that with the Wii U. And I know no one really likes the Wii U, although I love it. And it did fail,
like the Wii U,
unfortunately.
yeah.
Oh, it's so cool. It's another thing I've been playing the past couple weeks. I play my Wii U all the time.
Yeah.
But the Wii U had that kind of like asymmetrical dual screen kind of approach. But they first started toying with that. Well, there was old like Game & Watches in the 80s, but if we separate from that far back, with the GameCube and that Game Boy Advance cable and those few games that took advantage of it, it was like really revolutionary. It was cumbersome and expensive, and you had to have 4 friends and 4 Game Boys and 4 cords, to be able to really take advantage of it. But having like your little map and inventory on your Game Boy. It was weird to play a Game Boy and look at your TV, but it still like worked. It was so forward thinking.
And this is coming from the guy that likes Star Fox Zero. So that's really
That's right. That's right. I stand by that. I wish I could deport that to the GameCube. I'd play that with my Game Boy.
Exactly.
But it was just so fun. And it was also, it's worth noting the GameCube also represents, I think, Nintendo's last attempt to be on parity in terms of power and graphic capability. You know, they went with the mini disc, which was like a weird choice, but in retrospect, I actually find it really endearing.
Yeah,
I
they're
just
cute.
love that. They're so cute. And like, it's got the fucking little button, you know, like you push the center of it and the disc like boop, pops right off of it. And it's just so satisfying. It's just so great. So, you know, but they were really like, you know, people make a big deal about this nowadays. The PS2 was by far the most successful console that generation and is still to this day the most successful ever. But it was also the weakest of the three. So Nintendo was outclassing in terms of power the PlayStation 2 and wasn't too far behind the Xbox. And, you know, following the GameCube, I love the Wii, but they stuck with GameCube like architecture and it was still standard definition, whereas the other two guys went into that 720p HD definition at the time, HD graphics. And so the GameCube was really the last time Nintendo was, before they went into making weird stuff, the priority of their gameplay experience, they were still focusing on graphics and power, which they did with the Super NES. They did it with the N64. They did it with the GameCube. They were pushing for tech respective to those eras and decades. But the GameCube also sadly wasn't all that successful. It wasn't like a train wreck like the Wii U sadly was, but it was the least best-selling. And so I think that's where they were like, let's divert our resources into cheaper hardware with the Wii, and let's develop this crazier technology with the Wii Remote Nunchuck, which is primitive now, but was very like advanced and exciting at the time. And that it was really following the GameCube that it set them off on a different path to trying Wiis and Wii U's and Nintendo Switches, as opposed to following Sony and Microsoft and the super high-tech power. So that's a cool kind of thing about the GameCube era, you know?
Didn't play DVDs, but if you wanted DVDs, you could get a Panasonic Q, I guess. I always really wanted one of those big gray boxes. Those are really hard to find, but I really wanted one. I saw one the other day when I went to Game Over Video Games in person, but it was behind glass and I couldn't touch it.
Part of their museum or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then lastly, we got to give a shout out to the Wavebird as well. For just completely being I don't know if it was really technically the first wireless controller, but it was certainly the first one that like worked flawlessly, had a long as fuck battery life, you know, almost never had any connection issues, and was just totally changed the game as far as first party controllers and wireless functionality. You know, to this day, I use a Wavebird all the time to play Smash. Like whenever anybody comes over to my house to play Smash, I always whip out the Wavebird. Yeah,
I tweeted about this the other day because, you know, controller battery life and Wavebird stuff was coming up because of battery life. And I remember when it first came out and I was working for GameStop at the time and got my whole 10% discount on stuff. And I remember when, you know, I took it home, I had an apartment, you know, living with two other people. And it was so exciting because we literally tested it, no joke, by walking out to the street and like someone was inside watching the TV and I kept like moving things and they were like, it's still working. And I was like,
yeah.
It's still working. We got it really far.
There was that magazine ad too of like the guy like on the toilet with the controller, like playing the game in the mirror of the bathroom door. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
This is back when Nintendo
these things showed up.
Yeah, exactly. Back when Nintendo actually had like edgy advertising.
I'm surprised it took us that long to talk about the controller. There's more we could say about all this, I'm sure, but in the interest of time, moving on to the other half of our discussion, which is, you know, like David said, you can't play GameCube games through like an app on NSO. Maybe in the future, who knows? But right now, there are a lot of GameCube games that are available, including one that they just recently announced a remake of, which is Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Does anybody have any thoughts or excitement about this sort of remake coming, or any memories from playing the original that they want to share? Is this a game we all missed, or
I have thoughts and excitement. Yeah. Yeah. This was definitely a game that my sister and I hardcore bonded over.
Nice.
Took turns playing through chapters. I'm remembering now, like, as we're talking about this, I'm having memories. And this was definitely a game that we like totally played it together, like watched, like we're always together, playing it together, like taking turns with the controller, making like actively made decisions together. And I'm like, wow, did we fight at all? I think we actually like played nice together. And we didn't always do that. And the 1,000-Year Door, I think, maybe saved our sibling relationship. Because I remember when
you're still friends today.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as soon as they announced it, I watched it live, so I knew, but like she messaged me as soon as the Nintendo Direct ended and was like, it's happening again. I was like, and I don't know, maybe I'm gonna have to move in with her when this comes out so we can play it together again.
That's really sweet. I like that.
Yeah, that's really nice. This will be my first time playing this game whenever it comes out.
Wow.
I'm excited to play it. I played the original and I've played Paper Mario games since then, but this one always passed me by, so I'm excited. But I mean, this is this is like a remake. It kind of looks like it's kind of towing that line between remaster and remake. It looks like a very faithful remake, almost in the same way that like Metroid Prime Remastered, which we'll get to here in a second, it's called remastered, but it's really a remake. It's like every single asset is remade, right? But that just kind of goes to show that this is like the era of like this generation of consoles, not just GameCube, but also PS2 and Xbox, ports really well. Like I really like seeing PS2 games re-released these days, like almost more than I like seeing PS3 or Xbox 360 games released these days. They just this is like games had a really good art style and then they just scale really well to HD, right? So this game, while it is being remade, looks like how I remember it looking back in the day, and so I think a lot of the games on this list that we're saying will both, some of them are straight ports, some of them are remasters, some of them are remakes, but we're counting all of them on the list.
Yeah, good thing to point out, right?
Yeah.
But is there anything on this list that anybody's super jazzed about?
Well, yeah, to me, the obvious one is Metroid Prime Remastered.
Yep.
Because, like I said, it's my favorite game of all time. It made me the biggest fan of Metroid, which I still carry that torch to this day. And I attribute half of the small but kind of significant success I have on YouTube solely to being a Metroid fan and covering it from all angles, which I do on a regular basis. And I think that, I mean, David, you were just talking about it, man. Like what they did with Metroid Prime Remastered it's insane what they achieved. And also kind of like what you were saying, it's a testament to that game's specific design, both graphically and gameplay wise, and it translated so well to dual analog controls, but also still takes advantage of the classic awkward GameCube controls that I love from a nostalgic perspective, but definitely they're not the best way to play it. The motion controls with the Joy-Cons and whatnot work. And also just, even though it is a GameCube game that is remastered but remade, it's just so beautiful. And trying to not use my own personal bias as a Metroid Prime fanboy, like I think it is the best looking game on the Switch, which again, I think becomes both the testament to like what you can get out of the Switch when developers really push it. And going back to this point, just the fact that the way that game was designed, visually, it was ahead of its time at its time when it released on the GameCube in 2002. So yeah, I mean, everyone was like, I'd never seen anything like this. Halo was a year old, and so that was the first person game that was like dominating the conversation. And as somebody working in a GameStop 5 days a week, I can tell you at the time, everyone talked about Halo. And Grand Theft Auto 3. Those were the big topics of conversation. But Metroid Prime was like, never seen anything like this. The only complaint people had was all the scanning. That was kind of a new, awkward thing for a lot of us to get used to at the time. But just to keep us on track, I mean, that's the one that jumps out to me. I mean, to take one of the most famous and best reviewed games of all time and put that much effort into it, not a straight port, but remake all the visuals, that's the easy one for me.
Totally. It's incredible that the remake didn't do any quality of life updates other than the controls. It's like the game, it's not like they like added in a continue or like an autosave or whatever. It's like the game was designed at its fundamentals like so tightly and holds up so well to this day. Like that's pretty mind-blowing. And if you haven't ever played the original Metroid Prime and you have a Switch, like this is a no-brainer. Like you owe it to yourself to finally check this out. What an incredible game. Maybe we can like keep the ball rolling with like other first-party Nintendo games because there aren't that many re-releases, which is why a lot of people are like, are they making an NSO or whatever? And I don't think they are, but I do think that we will start to see over the coming months and years a lot more eShop releases from Nintendo of GameCube games. Namely, I mean, two that kind of came out of nowhere was Pikmin 1 and 2, right? Just kind of dropping out of nowhere, like, but in the lead up to Pikmin 4, right? And obviously Pikmin 3 Deluxe had already released, but these were ones that did not get much of a glow up at all. These are essentially ports, you know, these are just kind of upscaled. They did a little bit of like AI upscaling on the cinematics.
Cutscenes, they look like strikingly good.
Yeah,
like,
they look really
weird
good,
almost.
You know? Yeah. But again, you know, whether or not this got the Prime Remaster treatment, I think of these in the same breath as Metroid Prime Remastered, because this is another, like, these games just hold up. They're just still really fun. You know, there are some jagged edges and there are some like issues with it, but these games like play great. And they look good. You know, they don't look as good as the new games that really make the most out of the Switch's hardware. But I think, you know, if they did do like a Prime 2 and 3 re-releases, I think they could do what they did here, and I think everybody would be perfectly happy, right? Like, you don't need to give these games like a huge glow up. They just are really fun. I know, Patrick, you played both of these, right?
Yeah, I did. You know, like became a big Pikmin fan through Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and had played Pikmin 2 a little bit on the Wii, and this was my chance to like beat both of these. I think it's really funny that they renamed Pikmin to Pikmin 1. It's just a really weird choice. They didn't name.
I didn't think about that.
They didn't name Metroid Prime 1.
They renamed Star Wars 4. So
that's true.
There you go. That's
that
true.
is a true thing.
But they didn't do much, but it's not bad. They've got great gameplay, and what was like $40 for both of them? Am I wrong? Or was it 50 for both of them? I can't remember now, but
I think it was 30 a piece. Am I wrong?
It was 30 a piece, and you could buy them together for 50.
Maybe it was the together part, because I did that.
Yeah.
So either way, maybe it should be less, but it was fun to play through them for me. So
maybe we could briefly just get to the final, like, last actual Nintendo first party one, which is kind of a weird one because you actually can't buy it on the eShop anymore. But that would be Super Mario Sunshine, which was released as a part of Super Mario Brothers All-Stars. Super Mario 3D All-Stars.
It's 3D All-Stars.
I'm already forgetting what that thing was called. But it's just so weird that you can't buy this anymore. I mean, like, they produced enough physical copies to where it's not hard to find a copy of this. But Sunshine plays great on the Switch. Yeah. It's an excellent game. It's an often maligned game. A lot of people hate it for some reason. I don't really know why. It's definitely was a rushed game. You can tell it's not like really finished. It doesn't have the kind of usual level of Nintendo polish that like most 3D Mario games have. But it's in widescreen and in high definition on the Switch, and it plays great with modern controls. And they did some fixes for the camera and stuff like that. This is a really great way to play Super Mario Brothers Sunshine. Why do I keep saying brothers? Super Mario Sunshine.
Luigi's not there.
Yeah. Luigi is not present.
Not allowed in the sunshine. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, Sunshine it's one of those Nintendo games that has such a bad reputation. But I love it. I loved it when it came out. I think that the HD version that's available on All Stars is fantastic. It is a game that is like so punishingly hard. It's the only thing I struggle with when I go back to it. And I think that that's a combination of the kind of jankiness of the controls, that kind of unfinishedness that you were talking about, and the really rough camera. But if you spend time with it and you really dedicate some time to really getting good at Sunshine and working around the camera, it's a great game. I love that they included it and gave it a second life. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, this was my first time playing it, and what you just said, Rob, I had a lot of fun playing through it. There were a few parts where I felt really frustrated. And like David said, there were a few parts where you're like, this is a little rough around the edges, but it's still a really great game.
Oh, yeah.
How far into it? I'm curious, how could you like beat it? Or did you just play it for like
played quite a bit of it. I didn't beat it. I've been intending to go back. It's just, I think it just dropped off.
If you can beat the Nokia Bay section, then you're like a god amongst gamers, because that whole level is so freaking difficult.
Is that the one with the shadow of the blooper?
Oh, no, that's the haunted house one. You mean like the stingray thing on the bottom?
Yeah. That one's great.
No, that's also really hard. Nokia Bay is the one that's like a waterfall, and it's a really pretty kind of.
I remember that one.
But you can climb really high, and then you can also, there's a section underneath the water. It's like the third or fourth level. It's hard, man. Oh.
Yeah. And quick shout out to Super Mario Eclipse, I believe it's called. It's like a fan mod of Super Mario Sunshine that I think is coming out like in a month or so and looks to be like a full brand new game in the Sunshine engine. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, download it in like the 30 minutes it'll be available before Nintendo takes
long
it
enough
forever.
to get it onto archive.org and just call it.
That's all you need.
It's up there forever. Summer, do you want to do a pick?
Yeah, I'll do a pick of the last game that I played that is on it's not a first party, but I can talk about Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, which on the Switch is Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life. Got to make that clarification that between that time and now is when we no longer, just to recap really quickly, we can no longer, the company that localizes can no longer use Harvest Moon because the company that used to do it is like, no, we're going to make our own farming sims. So games that come out as Harvest Moon are not from the company that originally made Harvest Moon games. So when they get localized, they get called Story of Seasons games because of the naming of this game that helps people to understand that, like more casual fans will see the A Wonderful Life part. And so that gets them into looking up all of that goofy history. Now, something before even the remake came out in the past couple of years, when I would go back to the GameCube and try to play the original Wonderful Life, Another Wonderful Life, there were quality of life issues that prevented me from getting very far in it. Just like with modern gaming expectations, just certain things being so slow, control movements, that I was like, man, this sucks. I really hope that they remake this game. Everything that I could have wanted and more is updated in the Switch version. So the Switch version is definitely, or whichever version, but I mean, like, I like it on the Switch because I can play it when I'm in bed before I go to sleep. So, which you
can do if you put a little flip screen on your GameCube and lay it on your belly. Yeah.
True, but you don't have all the quality of life. I meant like you can't do that with like your PlayStation 5 if you get that version, right? Yeah. So I would say that the Switch is the way to go, and it plays great in handheld or docked. All the quality of life updates are there, plus more. They added like additional like story and character events, so definitely a definitive way to enjoy that.
Nice.
I'll pick another one here. I think I'll go here with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania.
Yeah,
this is an interesting one. Obviously Super Monkey Ball 1 and Super Monkey Ball 2 were both released as GameCube exclusives from Amusement Vision, published by Sega. This is back when Sega and Nintendo were right as rain. But Sega was doing lots of deals. Sega had a lot of stuff on the original Xbox as well. But Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania combines Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2 and what was scrapped of Super Monkey Ball 3, which was previously released on another compilation called Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. This is all remade from the ground up, but it really maintains that same physics system of those games, the challenge of those games, while doing a lot of quality of life improvements as well, like kind of doing away with lives for the most part, which especially as you get later in this game, you don't want to have to like lose all your lives, lose all your continues, and then go back and start all the way over from the beginning. I think it's just better to be done with them completely, just so more people can enjoy the games. I think that, having a mode where it does bring back lives for like the super hardcores is a really good way to do it. But if you've never played any Super Monkey Ball games, this is the one to play. It's, on every modern platform and especially on the Switch. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is a great introduction to the series, and I can't recommend it enough. I love the series with all my heart. Can't wait for the inevitable new game that's coming out. I hope it's good. It takes more from this than from the Wii game, but yeah.
That's not a confirmed game, is it?
No.
Is there isn't a
No, I'm just wishing
manifesting
really hard.
Manifesting over here.
Yeah.
You're banana festing.
Banana festing. Come on now. Sign me up for Banana Fest, baby. It's time. Are there any games on here that are sticking out to you? Other ones that you really like, Rob?
Yeah, there's actually so many. But I'm gonna stick with an easy one just because it's another one of my favorite franchises. And it's just the Resident Evil games, because I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, and you were talking about it earlier, David. The whole situation with Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube is a fascinating one because that was a big push by Nintendo. That's, by the way, like one of my top 3 or 4 all-time favorite games. The GameCube release, the remake from this year, is spectacular. Do not get me wrong. But my nostalgia for the original release is great. And I actually also played that last year. My wife bought me a copy because I had surgery coming up. I injured my arm and I had to get surgery. So she ordered a copy from eBay for me because I wanted to play the GameCube version. I didn't have it. I have the Wii one, but not the GameCube one. But the story with RE4 and the GameCube is fascinating because it was, like I said, like this big push with the Capcom 5, like you mentioned. Nintendo was like, we're going to find a way to start getting more mature and catching up with Sony and Microsoft on those angsty teens and those early 20 gamers, in the 2000s. And Resident Evil 4 was a massive deal because the franchise was huge. It was mostly synonymous with PlayStation for the first, I guess it would be 4 or so releases, including, or no, because Code Veronica was not PS1.
That was Dreamcast, yeah.
Yeah, it was Dreamcast and then PS2, but it just was associated with PlayStation, especially that first game. And so the idea of Resident Evil 4 was exciting. It was so mysterious, and all these leaks that kept showing up in magazines with like different versions of the game they were developing. And when it was announced as a GameCube Nintendo exclusive, not something people associated with kid-friendly Nintendo, it was a huge deal. And people pushed back. And I'd be curious if any of you guys knew or remembered this. Maybe you do, David. But Shinji Mikami, this is the famous creator and director of the Resident Evil games, he said, because people were pushing Capcom, put this on other consoles, don't make it exclusive to the GameCube. And he said before it came out, I will cut my head off before I let RE4 go to another console. And I am not kidding. I've included a snippet of that in videos in the past. Like I remember it. I even last year or so put it in a video I made. And it's funny because he said that they committed to GameCube exclusivity, but a year later it did come to the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
So it did, but
anyway, he waited until head reattachment technology had progressed to a point where he could keep living.
He needed Futurama tech, so he could just be a floating head in like a fishbowl.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, but it came out, and I mean that was a game I played at E3, before it had come out in 2004. And it was like, I've never seen a game look this good. It was so incredible. And also, I want to give special shout out to Resident Evil 1 Remake, because of all the remakes, I think I'm a rare person who I think that's the best of them all. Yeah. I like the modern ones, 2, 3, and 4. I love the third-person camera angle stuff, but committing to that classic Resident Evil with the static camera angles. And that game was also next-gen graphics at the time. Like, people were mind-blown with how beautiful that
I'd
was.
never seen a better-looking game than that when it came out. Yeah.
So good, and the new content they put into it, so I just appreciate those. And Resident Evil 0 is also fantastic. It's not talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are some great GameCube games.
I think a couple interesting ones on this list, and we'll get to all these. We might not have time to talk about all of them, but a couple that I do want to give some lip service to is Pac-Man Versus is on the Switch as a part of the Namco Classic Collection, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that was a game that utilized the Game Boy Advance connectivity, right? So one person played on the screen and then multiple people played as ghosts on their Game Boy Advances. So the way that you do that on the Switch is they actually have a specific second app for just that version. So it's like people can play on their particular individual Switches while somebody plays on a TV. So that's cool that a game like that had that very particular functionality from those peripherals actually has a pretty cool workaround on the Switch. So I wanted to definitely give that one a shout out. And you've also got Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles as well was ported. That's another game like we brought up before, used that functionality. I haven't played the Switch version of that. I don't know if you have, Rob.
No, but I've heard it's really bad.
Yeah.
Really? Okay,
I avoided it because I heard such bad things about it.
Yeah.
Did you play the original release?
My sister did. I watched her play it.
Right.
So
right.
it wasn't my thing.
What's supposed to be bad about the Switch version?
Well, missing the GameCube, listen to me, the Game Boy connectivity thing to me was definitely a turnoff. I think it was just another case of just being kind of janky. And just like, maybe performance and stuff. I don't know, Summer, if you knew more about it, but I just remember the conversation.
It's like
this is bad.
Yeah, it's like out of my memory now because it was so long ago and I honestly forgot about it. So.
Some of these games, the best way to play them is on the Switch. One of those is Ikaruga. Ikaruga was, I think, originally a Dreamcast game, but did have a GameCube port and was ported to some other consoles as well. I think one of the best reasons to play it on the Switch is it's a vertical shooter. And so this is a game where you can, if you have a flip grip, You can play this handheld in vertical orientation, or you could just put the Switch on its side and use that tate mode or Tate mode. I don't know what the fuck you call that, but you can play it like that and kind of like the way it was meant to be played, which you couldn't really do on the previous consoles unless you picked up your entire CRT and put it on its side, which not a lot of people were willing to do back in the day. So people just kind of played with borders on the side. But Ikaruga is an incredible, one of the best shoot 'em ups of all time. And it's so much fun to this day.
I would say Jedi Outcast is one of the best Star Wars games ever. And I haven't played it on the Switch, but I just love that game. And I think Jedi Academy also got a port as well, which didn't come out on the GameCube. But yeah, Jedi Outcast, one of just the greatest Star Wars games ever.
Yeah, it's definitely a port, right? It's like a port of the PC version, I think, that is on Switch. But it is just as fully featured as the GameCube version was.
Same
as
game,
well.
probably same
Yeah,
graphics.
Aspire doesn't work super hard on their ports of
I've
Star
heard
Wars
that
games, but
the
they do
KOTOR
put
and
them
stuff.
out, and I'd rather have them be bare bones than not have them at all. Right? I mean, I think that's something I've come to terms with the Switch.
I also want to ask about, because I didn't know Cell Damage was available in any way.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, I know the game. I used to have it.
Yeah.
But it's so obscure. So I didn't know that was
Cell Damage, I think, came out in like 2017 or something. It was like, it was really early in the Switch's life cycle, but it was just super random. Like they just released Cell Damage on everything. And that was such a fun kind of like, almost like a Demolition Derby kind of almost racing type game.
Kind of. Yeah.
I don't know. How would you even describe Cell Damage? That was a weird game.
My memory of it is, it was cell shaded graphics were like really taken off, and they were the bee's knees at the time. And it was a really pretty game. And it was like a Destruction Derby skateboarding Tony Hawk kind of. Am I remembering it right? That it had that kind of element, like a skate park or something, and using bombs, and like Crazy Taxi meets Tony Hawk or something.
Yeah, it was a very unique game. I loved it when I was a kid. I did play it on the GameCube back in the day. I didn't own it, but my friend Andrew did, and I would play it over at his house. And that was such a fun time. And so it's just nice to have that on here. Something that's like kind of, I guess, first party adjacent that we probably should have talked about earlier was the Baden Kaitos 1 and 2 remastered games. Like those were Monolith Soft games. Those weren't first party at the time. Now they are technically first party because Nintendo owns Monolith Soft. I've heard mixed things about those on the Switch. I think it's a lot of the backgrounds have like kind of AI upscales and don't look super great. And then also, even though everybody always hated the voiceover in the originals in English because it was really bad acting, they just removed them entirely from the re-release. So I think that makes sense, but I think a lot of people that are playing these for nostalgia purposes, were pretty disappointed by that.
Right? Like how much space could it possibly take on the Switch anymore?
Yeah.
I agree. It's the very reason I still own the first one. I love those games. It's the very reason I didn't pick up the HD ports. And I'm not like, I'll watch my anime or my foreign films with subtitles, don't get me wrong, but for a video game, and especially a game, if you already know the original release with the really awkward English tracks like I do, that's how I'd want to relive it. And so, like you said, Summer, you don't even have it as an option. Like, so it's like, why would I even?
Right. Just make it toggleable.
Yeah. I think they were embarrassed. My personal theory.
You're right.
Really, because it's pretty bad. It sounds like they're in like a cardboard box. Like on top of the acting not being good, the audio has such weird acoustic echo. Like it sounds like they're in a garage with like no padding in it. And so I kind of think it was embarrassment, and they didn't even want people to accidentally experience it. That's my conspiracy theory.
Got to use that Peter Jackson AI audio cleanup tech they used on that Beatles documentary. Anyway, I'm getting too into the weeds. Last one I want to get a little specific on before we just kind of rattle off the rest of these is Mr. Driller Drill Land. I didn't even realize this was a GameCube game. I didn't play this back in the day. I always loved Mr. Driller like in arcades, and I love the look of Mr. Driller, but I never actually had Drill Land as a kid. But I bought it recently on the Switch, and it is fucking fantastic. And it's one of these games where it's like you don't really have to do anything to it. The gameplay is there, it's solid, it's so fun, and it's just having this game portably with better graphics is awesome. And anybody who likes like kind of arcade games and really fast-paced puzzlers, I think really owes it to themselves to pick up Mr. Driller Drill Land whenever it goes on sale, which is pretty often, and it goes on sale for pretty cheap. So that's definitely worth picking up. Patrick, do you just want to like rattle off the remaining?
Sure, yeah. And then if anybody has a comment, they can make it. But here's what we have on this list that we didn't get a chance to talk about, which is Tales of Symphonia, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 1 and 2, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy.
Definitely the goated pick of all of these games. Yes.
I don't know how you say this. Is it 13X?
13, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But X, 13.
Maybe we'll briefly talk about that.
That's an
I know
interesting
people were really excited. 13 is like a first person shooter, again, in that kind of cell shaded style. It had a kind of comic book styling back in the day. This is one though that you probably don't want to play on the Switch. This got the like remake for this got pretty universally panned.
Really?
And apparently was kind of a hack job, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad to hear. Yeah, and then there were a couple more that we had on here, which was Alien Hominid, which was pretty recent. That didn't an old, I don't know. I know there's been another Alien Hominid game recently that came out on the Switch as well.
Yeah, I think this was one where they re-released this game kind of as a like, remember this IP exists because we're making a new one, you know? Yeah.
And then, of course, everybody's favorite GameCube game, Asterix and Obelix XXL. I
don't know nothing about that.
That's
what that is.
the Nordic comic, or is it French? Whatever European country.
This one's a bit of a stretch. It released on GameCube only in Europe and released in the US only on PlayStation 2 with the title Asterix and Obelix Kick Buttocks. Which is not as good of a title, but these games are actually
pretty great title. Actually, I kind of like it.
These games are actually pretty cool. I'm a big Asterix and Obelix fan, like Asterix just in general. It's kind of like French.
It's French,
comic. Yeah. But I have cousins who live in England, and they kind of introduced me to the Asterix comics, and I always wanted these games, and it never came to the GameCube in the West, so I never played it. But I've played them more recently, and I do enjoy them quite a bit.
So that's it. Maybe we missed something. If you're out there listening and you know of some other GameCube game that's on the Switch that you love, definitely holler at us and let us know. We'll shout you out.
Let us know, because I tried really hard to get every single GameCube game on the Switch on this list. But hopefully soon we can add some more of the Nintendo first parties to this list, like we talked about. Metroid Prime 2 and 3.
Prime 2 and 3.
Or I guess 3 was a Wii game, but Prime 2. Yeah. And then obviously Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. They got to come, man.
Yeah. One I do want to add that we know is coming is Beyond Good and Evil, which is one of my...
That's right.
Yeah, that's one of my personal top 10 favorite games of all time. And that was like this weird, if you guys were following it, like kind of leak hack thing that happened like in November or December, like pretty recently. And it was like exposed. Oh, no. It was like Ubisoft accidentally made their 20th anniversary like remaster live on their whatever Ubisoft's like download store is or something. And it was like, oh, this thing exists. And it was kind of rumored for a while. And then they had to pull it down because it wasn't finished. And Ubisoft came out after that, if you guys saw. And they were like, okay, cat's out of the bag. We're making this. And we'll tell you more about it in early 2024. So sometime soon, hopefully.
No, that's a great point, Rob. I knew there was a reason we had you on this episode.
And that was it.
All right, well, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for having me.
No. I'm just fucking with you.
Well, I think that's going to do it. Any final thoughts anybody wants to just inject before we close out this conversation?
Just that the GameCube is awesome.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they really hold up. Bring back Twin Snakes, you cowards.
Well, that's going to do it then for our discussion on the GameCube generally and GameCube games available on Switch. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the games we've been playing recently. I talked about playing Smash last week. I got together with my cousin and my friend Trent, and we played a lot more Smash. And I've continued to play a little bit online. But probably the biggest game I've continued to play, and I talked about this last week as well, is The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. We're talking about the Capcom and Nintendo a while back.
Collabs.
Yeah, I've been working my way through this. We're at the very end, but kind of like decided to do all the extra stuff because there's a lot of little, get all the heart pieces. Maybe, I don't know that we're going to do everything, but my son and I got to the end and I was like, you know what? I don't think we're ready for this. It's
a hard game.
The very end, there's like a few like gauntlet things to get to the final boss. And we were at those, and those were not that hard, but they were causing me a little bit of trouble. And it's like, I think if we had a few extra heart pieces, whatever we're missing, because we were missing an item or two, might make things a little easier. So we're doing a lot of the little things we missed along the way and finishing that up. But I've been really enjoying this game.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
We love Fujibayashi, man. What an amazing Zelda director.
And just real briefly, my kid has been into Among Us and forcing me and my wife to like join his room that he creates. I had a little life lesson with him where he created a room. We got 15 players in there. And right before we started the game, he changed the map. And I was like, dude, you can't do that. Everyone's going to quit. And everybody quit. And I was like, see? And he was like, I get it. I understand now. I won't
teach that kid some hard lessons.
Life will bite you in the ass if you're not ready.
Well, I think it's like a good social thing. You can't pull the rug out from people right at the last second. Like, enough people quit.
How old is he? Can I ask?
Yeah, you can ask. He's 9.
Okay.
So, Yeah, he's prime Among Us age.
It's crazy that your kid is 9 already. I feel like he was a baby 2 days ago.
Yeah. That's me. That's we have had a lot going on in real life. So mostly Minish Cap and a little bit of those other things.
Very cool. I'll go next. Like I said up top, I haven't been playing a ton of games this week because I've been still reading that book. I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to go back to continue reading after this, tomorrow. It's really fantastic. But I do want to talk about a couple games because last week I had like a ton of games on the list and I didn't get to all of them. So I want to give a little bit of lip service to some of the ones that I didn't talk about last week. One of them is Proteus. Now, this is not Proteus with a T, which is a tranquil first-person artistic indie game. This is Proteus with a D, which is a hardcore pixelated boomer shooter that is incredibly gory and very violent and fast-paced. I basically recently went through all the like humble choice that I forgot that I was subscribed to and like put all these codes like on my Steam Deck and finally so I added there was like a day where I added like 30 like games to my Steam Deck all at once, and pretty much the main one I played out of all these was Proteus, and it is such a fun game. I've been getting really into like boomer shooters more recently. I've got a bunch of them on my Switch as well, like between like Quake and Doom and Duke Nukem and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not like huge into shooters or like really like a ton of violent games anyway, like the older I get, with the exception of hardcore boomer shooters. And I've been playing the shit out of that. I've been really enjoying Proteus. And this is actually a game when I'm playing it on Steam Deck that I can actually get like 90 frames per second on because it's not that intensive. And with like the Steam Deck OLED, like 90 hertz refresh rate, it actually like looks pretty great and is rock solid. So I've been really enjoying that. And then speaking of boomer shooters, I want to bring up the next one that I've been playing, which is a very, very odd game called Fida Pudi Samurai. Now, this game, I don't know. I didn't know anything about this game other than I saw the developer post videos of it on Twitter. And so I checked it out and I bought it over the Steam sale over Christmas. And this is like a boomer shooter that is like a roguelike, but just the whole vibe is so insane. Like, first of all, like all the enemies are like scantily clad like anime waifus. Like,
is it a first person game or is it? Like
it's a first person shooter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's like, but the game is like, it's a game within a game. So like you start in a little room and you put on a VR headset or something like that. And then you're in this world. And so it's kind of like, it's got a whole bunch of like meta commentary like throughout it. And it's got a really like sick and funny sense of humor, and it's just like, I don't know, if I'm ever just looking for like maximalist like overload, like I go and I put on Fida Pudi Samurai, and it's a really fun game. It's still in early access, but I'm really enjoying it, and it's a very fun, funny experience, and I recommend it if you're looking for kind of roguelike boomer shooter sort of thing. And then I played another code demo. Maybe we'll talk about that later. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't get very far into it, and then I put it down. And then I haven't picked it back up, and I don't know if I will be getting this game. I don't know if it's for me ultimately. Like, I know it's fully remade, ground up from the DS version, and is like a fully 3D game now, where the original was not. But it also feels a little jank. Like, the camera's a little janky. It's fully voice acted in a lot of scenes, but the voice acting's like a little breathy is what I'll say. There's a lot of stuff like that. It's kind of weird.
Just anime games for you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's like a extra. It's a lot of it, and it's like, and so I don't know. I will go back to this, but I don't know if I'm going to be picking up the full game. We'll have to see about that. And then last, I just want to give a shout out to Cena, who I hung out with the other day, and Mikey Dodo, who was here in town. Michael Domingue, who's a friend of the show. He's been on a number of times. We went on a little adventure, me and Michael Domingue, to find a power glove at Game Over Video Games. We went to multiple stores and
for
eventually
him or
bought
for
one.
you?
For him. Yeah. I was
fun.
I was chauffeuring him after we went and saw a movie together, and he eventually got one, and it was a super great time. But then the end of
how much was it? I'm curious.
I don't think he is comfortable with me saying on the podcast.
Okay.
Because
that means it's
pretty
pricey.
Expensive. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
They were asking for $300 at the beginning.
Holy shit.
For everything. He was able to talk them down a little bit. He was able to knock the price down about $100, but it was worth it. It was a fun time. But anyway, the whole point of me saying that was to say that at the end of the night, after hanging out with him and Cena, Cena came over. We played some Samurai Gun 2, which will eventually, hopefully one day, get a Switch release. They promised a Switch release for Samurai Gun 2 many years ago. It's still in early access on PC. Who knows when that'll ever come out? But it's so much fucking fun. If you like Smash likes and really fast-paced multiplayer gameplay like that, Samurai Gun 2 is one of the best games of all time. It is like a game designer's video game. I know, like all the game devs I know play Samurai Gun and love it. And so, yeah, that's what I've been playing.
Right on. I haven't been playing a lot of games lately either, and I'll just go ahead and say it's funny because all of my time has been spent. I'm costuming things that are all from video games, and I've been practicing music, all music from video games. Like I almost feel like so when I'm taking breaks from doing that, I'm playing a couple of rounds of Fortnite. I'm still doing it, man.
Ain't no shame in playing Fortnite.
If you want to do Battle Royale, no build mode, literally like hit me up. I will be down to do that with you. I'm actually debating on getting the battle pass because there's some skins I'm interested in, and I've never spent money on it before. And there are like these really cute Catgirl outfits right now. And I'm past the level to collect it if I decided I wanted to spend like like $10 worth of V-Bucks to get a battle pass. Like, it's not horrible, honestly. And then I did pop back into Fire Emblem Engage, but it was mostly just to spend time with my waifu, Yunaka, again. And just to like bring things back around because I wanted to really get some good screenshots of her Somnial outfit, what she wears outside of battle when you're on your little resort island thing in between battles. Because I decided that so Saturday of MagFest, I was already planning on wearing her so one of my big builds this past year was her regular outfit for Yunaka. And I decided that it was going to be way too late for me to put together Dorothea from Fire Emblem Three Houses after I found out a week ago that I got this solo. So I was like, why don't Yunaka's still kind of like a performer. Why don't I put like her Somnial outfit together? And like, that's what I'll wear for the choir performance. I thought that would like be fun and appropriate. And I was like, I can't tell what color this skirt is supposed to be, like for real. So I, got in and got some better screenshots of that and just like revisited her voice lines and stuff. And yeah, that's that. I'm sure I'll have way more games to talk about next time I'm here.
It's a great game though. I feel like it got kind of overlooked this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. Totally it made me in Patrick's lists for this past year for sure. We're big Fire Emblem fans. So
what about you, Rob? What have you been playing this week?
Well, it's weird because I feel like I haven't had a lot of time to play a whole lot of games, but when I kind of thought about it before coming on, it's like, I guess I have been chewing through a few things. I kind of mentioned earlier, it's funny because it's so relevant to this episode, this podcast, is I have been playing a couple of GameCube games. I've been playing Turok Evolution, if you want to talk about a boomer shooter. The kind of it's not like boomer shooter like Doom and Wolfenstein era, but Turok Evolution is like a weird Turok game that I was so excited for. And when it came out, I hated it. I think it was even the same day or same week as Mario Sunshine by coincidence. I could be wrong, but I feel like I bought them on the same day in 2002 when they came out, or 3 maybe. But I randomly like had an inkling to play it a couple months ago, bought a copy, and it's really hard because it's like so janky. But when you adjust to the jank, you kind of re-jank yourself to like how that game is like kind of asking you to play it. It's actually pretty good. It's so fucking hard, but I've gotten pretty far through it. So I'm enjoying reliving that through nostalgia. I'm also playing Enter the Matrix for the first time because I rewent through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I worked at GameStop when that game came out, and it was a huge deal because it was the year of Reloaded and Revolutions. And full disclosure, I'm a huge Matrix fan. All 4 movies to me, even the new one, I think are great movies. And so I rewatched all 4 of them like a month or 2 ago because I just decided to. And I was like, God, I just love this world. I just need more of it. And I was like, I never played Enter the Matrix. Like, why didn't I play that game? So I bought it and I've been playing through it. Started as Niobe, and it's a lot of fun. What I'll say about that game is it's pretty brilliant what they did, both from like a marketing and world building standpoint, because I looked into it, they filmed like many hours of footage with the real actors as Niobe and Ghost and a couple of other side characters from the 2 sequel films. And it's very contextual to like the Osiris ship that was part of the Animatrix. And I could nerd out about Matrix stuff forever because I love it so much.
We got to do an all Matrix podcast, Rob.
I'm in. Tell me when. You know what? I'll cancel dinner and do another hour if you want. My wife will be like, that's my man. That's what
this is who I picked.
This is who I picked. But I will say from a gameplay perspective, if it sounds like David, you've played it. I don't know if anyone else has.
Yeah, I loved it when I was a kid. Even though I know it has flaws, I still really enjoyed it.
It's also janky, which is kind of, I think, the theme of the podcast, talking about 6th generation stuff. But like, because the camera stuff is weird, but the combat and the ability to use your Matrix time focus stuff is actually pretty forward thinking for the era it came out in. So that's something I've been appreciating as I've been reliving it for the first time in 2023 and now 24, just like what that game was. So those are the 2 GameCube games I've been playing. I've also been playing Red Steel 2 on my Wii through my Wii U console, which is, I've already played that back in the day. I'm just reliving it. It's a fantastic game. It holds up so stinking well. When there's good motion controls, the Wii was really pretty cool. Also playing Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii. So those are all my old games. Yeah, and then the only current game that my wife and I have been playing together is Alan Wake 2, which we still haven't finished.
Nice.
If anyone's played that.
No, I'm working my way up. I'm on Control now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's when I've tried a few times, and I know it's a great game. My younger brother tells me it's like amazing, and it's not clicked with me. And I know it's in the same universe, so I wanted to try it, but it just didn't click with me much.
It's worth revisiting. I had a similar thing where it took me a bit. There was like a little hump, and then I got past it, and I really enjoyed the game. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we're big fans. Like I introduced my wife to the remaster of the first game when that came out like 2 years ago or whatever. And horror games are games that we like to play together. Where usually I play. She loves Resident Evil. I'm going to show her Silent Hill 2 when the remake comes out because I know she's going to love that. And so we played Alan Wake, and of course it's great. And then Alan Wake 2 was announced like months later. It was like right after we finished it, Alan Wake 2 was announced. And so we're going through it slowly because we have to match our schedules and what we want to do for the evening up. But we're like probably just past halfway, played it the other night. And it's a great game. It's beautiful. It's genuinely scary, in my opinion. And the story is like really complex and even kind of confusing at some points, but it's a great game. And Saga Anderson is a really cool character. I kind of wish she won Best Performance at the Game Awards. I'm sad she didn't, but she was great. And the guy who plays Alan Wake is amazing. And it's a great game. So that's what I'm playing.
Thank you so much, Rob, for coming on this episode and talking with us about GameCube and GameCube on Switch. Thanks to MilkyWay.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. If you're looking for me, Patrick, you can find me online most places as PDYX.
You can find me at Weebwitched.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Rob? Where can people find you online?
You can find me on YouTube at my channel, which is Ruleof2Review, and also on Twitter at Ruleof2Review. And it's the rule of the number 2, not the word 2. And that's where you can find me. I use both very actively.
Rob is definitely worth a follow on Twitter if you're looking for game-related stuff. Also, just super spicy movie takes all the time. Yeah, lots of engagement over Rob's movie takes. I love to see it.
I'm a big movie nerd.
Yeah, I'll have to have you on Super Film Head sometime. And then if you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Maybe?
Yes.
Yes, and TikTok. Now we're getting that going. So make sure you follow us over there. And then we got a website, switchheadz.com. And we also have a Discord and a Facebook group. We'll have links to both of those in the description of this episode. Please join us over at the Discord. The Discord is such a wonderful community. The least toxic gamers on the internet all live in our Discord and have the best time over there. So join us over there. Why don't you? That's going to do it for this episode on the GameCube. Ooh, what a blast. I had a good time. Don't touch that dial, though, because we're going to be back next week with another fantastic episode. Can't wait to get into all of it with you. But until then, you guys know the drill. Stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Play some fucking GameCube games on the Switch. We just gave you a whole list. Your cup overfloweth. We'll see you guys next week. I love you very much. Bye-bye.